seconds.
Minister, in view of the very significant increase in the number of people who are commuting by bicycle and the ongoing dangers posed to cyclists by the lack of safe cycling facilities, and particularly the lack of segregated cycle lanes segregated from general traffic, will you outline your plans to significantly increase the funding provided to cyclists in terms of providing segregated cycling lanes and other safety measures which are so urgently needed?
I get 2 minutes.
Yeah, I'd like to thank the Deputy for this very topical and very important question. Over recent years, data published from various sources shows the increase in the number of persons commuting by bicycle. For example, recent data published by Dublin City Council and the NTA in the annual Canal Cordon Report shows an upward trend of cyclists crossing the canal that continued between 2016 and 2017, with numbers increasing by 3%. There has been a steady year-on-year growth in the number of cyclists crossing the cordon since 2010. Indeed, in 2017, almost 12,500 cyclists crossed the cordon in the morning peak period. This represents an increase of over 150% when compared to 2006 and represents an increase of over 57% in the last 5 years. The Central Statistics Office has also published statistical information on cycling, including the National Travel Survey, which illustrates the prevalence of cycling and the upward trends in the cycling numbers. Clearly, cycling numbers have shown a steady increase in recent years, and this is one of the reasons why I work to secure a substantial multi-annual funding allocation for this area as part of Budget 2018. The increase I secured has allowed over 110 million of capital funding to be directly allocated to develop cycling and walking infrastructure in the Greater Dublin area, Galway, Limerick, Cork and Waterford over the period 2018 to 2021. This programme will provide safe, alternative active travel routes that will help alleviate congestion by providing viable alternatives and connectivity with existing public transport infrastructure. Details of individual projects are managed by the NTA. Over the same period, a further 135 million capital funding is allocated for investment in sustainable urban transport projects. And these will include projects that will provide either direct or indirect improvements for urban cycling. This programme builds on investment to date to deliver improvements in public and sustainable transport infrastructure in the regional cities and the GDA. It includes traffic management, bus priority and other smarter travel projects which will allow transport infrastructure to function more effectively and will help relieve traffic congestion and therefore improve safety for cyclists.
The remainder will be included in the official report.
Okay.
Deputy Shortall.
Thank you, Minister. I think we all recognise that there has been a substantial increase in the number of people commuting by bicycle, but at the same time it only amounts to 3% of commuters, and in relation to children commuting to school, it's an even lower figure at 2%. So clearly, the potential for more and more people to cycle is there, and that's a very laudable objective, and an objective that the government should be clearly behind, both in terms of its impact on personal health, activity levels, helping to reduce congestion, helping to reduce CO2 emissions and so on. So, there's a lot to benefit society by encouraging and supporting more people in cycling. But, this all does boil down to funding. And unfortunately, the funding levels have been incredibly low over recent years. In a recent reply to me, you stated that the amount provided for cycling was only 2.2% of the overall road transport budget last year. So clearly there's a huge amount of ground to make up. And it is about setting very clear targets. And do you accept, Minister, that the safer you make cycling, the more people will actually start commuting by bicycle, and that the lack of safety and the lack of segregation of cycle lanes is the big barrier to people taking that step of deciding to cycle to work or to school or college? So, Minister, can you set out what your targets are in terms of the percentage of the road transport budget that you believe needs to be dedicated to cycling?
Minister, 1 minute.
In answer to the Deputy, first of all, I accept what she says, that the safer the roads are, for cyclists, the more cyclists there would be. I think that's indisputably true. And I think maybe because I didn't finish my first part, I didn't spell out some of the other intentions that we have with cycling and the commitments that we have made. Apart from the 110 million, which is a trebling of the amount to be spent on walking and cycling, I think which is indicative of the fact that, first of all, I acknowledge that we were behind. I think that's right. I think what the Deputy is saying is correct. We didn't allocate enough to cycling, and we've got a lot of catch-up to do, and we're well behind a lot of countries. And I acknowledge all the benefits which he says, and I bought in, I think I said to Deputy Troy earlier, I bought into cycling. I think this is something we've got to spend money on, and we've got to commit to for all sorts of reasons, not just the very obvious ones, but the health ones. But, you know, the Bus Connect, which is coming through in Dublin, as you know, and we're going to debate later this evening, it'll deliver over 200 kilometres of cycle lanes on the key radial routes into Dublin city centre that will provide for safe cycling arrangements. These will be largely segregated, which is what the Deputy is looking for. These will be, I'm not going to say completely segregated, but wherever practical, will be largely segregated. That is a huge commitment, not just to cyclists, but to cyclists' safety as well. And that's coming in, and that we're spending, you know, approximately 750 million on Bus Connects, and cycling is a very large and very important ingredient of that. On top of that, we're spending a large amount of money on greenways. There's now a capital allocation of over 55 million for greenways, which is obviously going to be a commitment to cyclists, and a further 135 million capital funding is allocated over the period coming to sustainable transport.
Just all of my suggestions are falling on deaf ears. Deputy Shortall, your final supplementary.
Right, thank you. Minister, as you know, cyclists.ie have called for a 10% allocation to improving cycling facilities, 10% of the overall transport budget. Do you accept this figure? You've said you're committed to improving facilities for cyclists. What target are you working towards in terms of the percentage of transport funding that you will allocate to improving cycling facilities? And would you accept that setting a clear target is the only way of making progress in this area? You spoke about Bus Connects. What percentage of the Bus Connects budget are you saying will be allocated to cycling? And while the greenways are very popular and a great help towards, you know, improving tourist numbers, really my concern is principally in relation to commuting in Dublin in particular, but also in the other cities. So can you tell us now today what target percentage are you talking about allocating towards cycling, and what kind of timescale have you got in mind in order to reach that target?
Final response.
Let me respond to that as much as I can. I can't give you and won't give you a percentage commitment of allocation to cycling, but what I can give you is the figure that we've got 110 million, which is a trebling of what we had before. That is a very, very large and significant step change in a commitment to cycling, which wasn't here in recent years. And I concede fully that that is necessary. And what we have got to do is to educate people and provide the facilities for people, and to reassure everybody that cycling is safe. There is a narrative which is current, which is that cycling has not been safe, and that has got some justification, and it's certainly got some support, and it's got a little bit of movement and traction. I want to reassure people by giving these segregated cycling lanes, particularly in the cities to which you refer, and by introducing other measures. And safety is the most important element in the whole of the road safety, the whole of the transport portfolio, that by introducing other measures, and I'll be making announcements shortly about it, that cyclist safety is a top priority.
Deputy Clare Daly.